Welcome to Mach 10 Sports in this February 8th, 2024 episode. I hope you're having a phenomenal Thursday night. We are here at the Mach 10 studio. Again, I'm your host, Dave Shoemate, coming here to you live from the SEC Unfiltered platform. I am Mach 10 Sports. Again, like I said, Dave Shoemate, worked in college football for 10 years. Couple different SEC schools I went and ran recruiting departments at. We cover football, basketball, and baseball. Do my live shows here on SEC Unfiltered on Monday and Thursday nights. If you haven't joined us yet, welcome. We're off to a fun show tonight. Real quick, want to go through the rundown of how the show is going to be set up. I want to start off the show by saying there's going to be a lot of upset wives, girlfriends, significant others of extreme college football fans out there. And you may ask why. It's because ESPN has once again made College Gameday appointment television. Hear me out. Your lady may try to trap you with some honey-do list before the games start on Saturday in this upcoming fall in 2024. But I'm here. I'm giving you 6 months in advance. Your boy is giving you 6 months notice to get your business in order, to make sure that doesn't happen. Because you know what? You're not going to fall into that trap again. Because like I said, College Gameday, like how it used to be appointment watch TV. It hadn't been like that in a while. That's just my opinion. You may feel different. You're obligated to your own opinion. It's like we've gotten off track, but I'm going to tell you why in just a moment, why you need to get your order in business. So where you're sitting down, it's not just background music anymore. You're actually locked in. Speaking of trap, we are going to talk about a potential trap game on every SEC team's 2024 schedule. Another fine guest, in my opinion, coming on, if I don't say so myself, SEC staffer, personal friend of mine, Texas A&M Director of Scouting, David Bowen, is going to join us to discuss the college football, specifically the recruiting landscape. David's been all around the SEC, Georgia, Mississippi State, Texas A&M, LSU. He was there in 2019 with LSU. Florida with Dan Mullen, been all over the place, so he has good thoughts. Then I must say the midweek action on the hardwood, somewhat chalk across the board. Hell, if I didn't have just kind of a feel game, I picked with Ole Miss beating South Carolina, and that was more like, hey, South Carolina's due to not play well. So I went with Ole Miss. I should have went 6-0 this week. I should have went 6-0. But again, instead we went 5-1. 5-1. We're doing good in our picks. We'll talk about that here in a little bit when we talk basketball. Like I said, a lot of expected outcomes. And finally, in regards to basketball, we'll review those matchups, preview this weekend slate. We got one out-of-conference matchup with Kentucky and Gonzaga. And then I'll discuss the ceiling and floor of all 9 potential NCAA tournament teams from the SEC in regards to how far they can make it in. But first, before we get into around the SEC, let me share the link with my guy David, and we'll be getting him on here right off the bat, right after we go around the SEC. Let me let him know we sent it. Perfect. All right. As always, we start off going around the SEC before we get Bowen on here. SEC announces revenue brought in. Let me share the graphic for you over here. Bring it up, talk a little SEC. What is it? Here it is. Right here. SEC announces $741 million of total revenue is divided among its 14 universities for 2022-2023 fiscal year, ending August 31st. The distribution, excluding keyword, bowl revenue retained by schools for bowl expenses average $51.3 million per school. I think when Texas and Oklahoma come in and we get 16 teams, I saw some projection I was looking at today. It's going to bump up to 58, 59. So there's some news. That's why people are joining the SEC, stuff like that. People, today's your classic day. People are like, and we say we can't pay the kids. Well, there's some other things, but to cut some other sports. But just wanted to bring it up. $51.3 million per school for the 22-23 year. That's only going to go up. Also, going around the league right now, Nick Saban joining College Gameday, must-watch TV again, is a college football fan. Now you got Reese Davis, Kirk Herbstreit, Pat McAfee, Desmond Howard, Lee Corso, and now the best analyst out there, Nick Saban, best analyst on set immediately. My question is he going to be good at it? It's, will he like it? Will he enjoy it? Because, again, I don't have experience on TV, but from hearing people talk about it, there's a time limit crunch. You can't go over a 4 or 5 minute segment. Some things get delayed. Does his knee start shaking? He gets frustrated because things aren't on schedule like he's supposed to be. TV takes patience. You don't have all the time in the world to speak, like I mentioned. So he's going to have to hone that in, but I think he'll be fine. And then also, I'm looking forward to, will he be honest and critical on here? He likes to talk up coaches. That's what he is. But will, like, for example, just throwing Ryan Day out there, will he kind of call them out as like, hey, I think he got a little conservative there last week against Wisconsin on the road. I thought they could have probably went for it there. Or I don't really like how they went. I don't really like how Lane went for it last week. It'll be interesting. Like, will he be honest and critical? I think that'll be great for the show. If I was ESPN, I know he's the GOAT. You let him do what he wants to do with Nick Saban. But I encourage him, hey, we're going to have your back. I'm sure Pat McAfee's going to have his back. Kirk Herbstreit's going to have him. Coach, go out there and give us some honest critique. I mean, you're one of the best college football lines, not only from an X and O standpoint, it's not even his biggest strength. It's from a total organization down, CEO, recruiting, structure of staff. I think that's great insight he's going to be able to bring in. And I think we just changed the game on College Game Day. Again, for the longest, I should say the longest, past 5-6 years, in my opinion, College Game Day has been background noise. While I was prepping for games and stuff. Heck, I'd have it on while I was getting ready when I was working in college football before we had kids coming on campus. Just have his background. Now, this is the real deal Holyfield. We got a legit greatest of all time coach on set. It's going to be great. I'm fired up for it. Like I said, you got 6 months to get your honey to-do list in order before your wife starts giving you some work from 9 to 11 for those games kick off on Saturday. You're welcome for giving you that notice, but you can't miss College Game Day anymore. You just can't miss it. And then finally, before we get David on, SEC baseball, coaches poll coming out. The SEC baseball coaches poll coming out. Breaking down the divisions, East-West. Remember, first pitch is next Friday. We get kicking in the Eastern Division. Florida receiving some first-place votes. We got Florida coming in at number 1, Tennessee coming in second, Vanderbilt third, South Carolina fourth, Kentucky fifth. New coach at Georgia, Coach Johnson coming in at 6th. And then also we got a new coach at Missouri as well at 7th, coming over from Memphis. Western Division, we got Arkansas, who's kind of leading the way. Them and Florida going back and forth of who is getting the first place votes heading into the preseason to win the league. LSU, the defending national champs, coming in at 2nd. Texas A&M coming in at 3rd. Alabama, new head coach Rob Bond coming over from Maryland. Has some guys back, got in the portal, did a pretty good job 4th. What do you know? Auburn picked in the bottom half of the league, like they always are, but Butch Thompson always overachieves. He does. He's been to 2 Omaha appearances. Great guy. When I worked at Auburn, I would have conversations with him. Me and him shared a few drinks in the hospitality suite in New Orleans for the Sugar Bowl. Great guy. Has that program rolling. Always underachieves or overachieves. I think he does the same this year. Ole Miss and Mississippi State coming in at 5th and 6th and 7th. All going to come down to pitching for both these teams. Unfortunately for Ole Miss, they lost their Saturday night guy in a scrimmage last week due to a torn UCL in his elbow. It's a tough break. Arkansas lost somebody as well. You hate to see that. Again, like I mentioned, Arkansas receiving 9 votes, LSU 3, Florida 2 to win the league. And then quickly rolling through the first team, catcher Cole Messina from South Carolina, first baseman Jack Caglione from Florida, who also is on the second team as a pitcher. Jack Caglione, freak show. Second baseman Cade Curlin for Florida. Third baseman Tommy Tanks White coming in from LSU. Shortstop Colby Shelton, the transfer from Alabama, played third base last year as a freshman. That transition over to shortstop will be interesting. He's a freshman in the league last year, but did have the greatest glove. I'll say that. Then the outfield, Chase Lavalette at Texas A&M, Ethan Petrie at South Carolina, Kendall Diggs at Arkansas, DH Ike Irish from Auburn, and then your pitching rotation, Hagen Smith from Arkansas, Drew Beam that we're all familiar with at Tennessee, and Brandon Neely, who's been around the league as well at Florida. Second team, catcher Devin Burks from Kentucky, first baseman, one of the guys Coach Johnson that he believes in coming back, Charlie Condon, one of Georgia's better players. Second baseman Christian Moore from Tennessee, third baseman Billy Amick, the Clemson transfer who transferred to Tennessee. He gets the third base spot on second team head of the year. Shortstop Jonathan Vastine from Vanderbilt. Outfielder Braden Montgomery from A&M. Dakota Jordan in the outfield as well from Mississippi State. Outfielder Bobby Pierce. We got DH utility Hayden Travinsky from LSU. Had some big home runs last year. What was it, the Sunday game in Oxford last year? Had a big home run to give Ole Miss the lead when they were down to their last out. Like I mentioned, starting pitcher, first baseman, best overall probably prospect in the league, Jack Caglione coming in. Remember, starts at first for Florida, also their Saturday night guy. then Carter Holton from Vanderbilt, and then right-handed pitcher. It's going to be up in the air. Is he going to be in the rotation, or was the true freshman All-American who was a closer for Alabama going to stay in the pen? I think they're still trying to figure that out, but he gets on the second team. So baseball, it's not even right around the corner, guys. It's right in front of our face now. Again, I think the SEC could have anywhere from 7-8 host spots, getting 10 to 11 teams in. So that's kind of where we stand right now from that perspective. But let's bring in my guy here, David Bowen. Oh, what up, baby?
What up, Dave? How you doing, man?
Doing well, brother. How's everything going over there?
Everything's great, man. Good to see you.
Good to see you, brother. Good to see you. Bo, so tell us a little about, for the people that do not know, again, like I previewed the show for you, got on, told them about all your spots, but you give the people that don't know already who, like kind of your background in the personnel world. Again, we got David Bowen's been, Bo, you've been to more SEC schools than anybody else I know. And you give us the run through. Where else you been? Tell the people where you been.
Right. So this is my 10th year in college football and recruiting and player personnel. You know, I started 2014 as an intern at the University of Louisville. Bobby Petrino's second stint over there, his first year when they moved into the ACC. Spent a year over there. We ended up signing Lamar Jackson and Jair Alexander, so it was a pretty good recruiting year for us. After that, I left and went to Georgia, Mark Rick's last year, where I was able to work with you for a year, and spent a couple years with Kirby Smart as well. And as you know, in order to move up, you have to move out. So I went to Mississippi State after that, spent a year over there with Dan Mullen and his staff. Fortunate enough to be able to get a job offer from them, and was able to go over there with those guys. Spent a year over there, and then the LSU job came open, and, you know, I'm from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, so it was great. You know, it was an opportunity I couldn't pass up. Went to LSU, got there in 19, was part of that championship run. Was there for a few years. And then when Coach O left, I ended up going to Texas A&M. And that's kind of where I'm at now with the director of college scouting.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, seriously, you've been around the SEC landscape. Really, you've seen it from when we were at Georgia 14-15 to how it's changed now. Just tell us your thoughts. I mean, there's so many rule changes. In fact, we see a Ross Dellinger article every day talking about something Congress is doing, NCAA trying to pass. We've seen the Tennessee, Florida State stuff. What's kind of your thoughts on the current landscape from a personnel recruiting side of things at that level in the SEC?
Right. You know, it's pretty crazy right now. You know, you got the transfer portal. You're having to evaluate guys before they even get in the portal, just guys that may get in. You're dealing with NIL, dealing with all that kind of stuff. And then you're recruiting 2 to 3 different classes at the same time. So there's a lot going on. But the landscape's good. You know, I'm optimistic about everything that's going on out there. You know, you see more GM jobs are opening up and being created across the country. It gives people more of an opportunity. You're seeing personnel get more of a voice. You see this stuff starting to create more of an NFL front office style personnel office. So it's an optimistic outlook on everything that's going on in college football, although it's really crazy.
But we talked a little bit about it on the phone yesterday from somebody that we both know. He brought up the idea. This question kind of just came to my mind here. Do you see maybe when more teams administrations start getting a better pulse from this kind of salary cap roster management standpoint? Do you maybe see some teams down the road going to grab a second, third guy from an NFL organization that maybe has some value, obviously is evaluated at the high level, the National Football League, but also kind of understands this, not money ball, but the salary cap standpoint that maybe some of these college personnel guys don't understand? Do you maybe see a team going down that route here in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I've talked to a few coaches that have mentioned that as well. You know, this starts going into, you know, potentially revenue sharing and stuff, and guys start getting slotted, you know, at different positions, like money wise. You're going to have to bring in some guys that have experience with the cap. I think there's an opportunity out there for more jobs to be created in that aspect. I think you'll start seeing more NFL guys potentially come into college to get these GM jobs. I think that's an opportunity too. You're spot on with that.
Transitioning a little bit, I think this is something just your casual fan wouldn't know about. We're going to talk a little bit about just like the offer process, just from that standpoint, the offer process of just in college football, especially how you handle in-state kids in today's time. It used to be, you tell me, I've been out of it for a year and a half. Is it still kind of like, hey, if it's an in-state kid, we're not gonna if we're gonna offer, it's gonna be committable? Kind of tell us that process, some advice you could give some kids if anybody's listening, of kind of like, hey, like if you're probably not hearing from the head coach or like your position coach, I don't know if it's a committable offer. If they won't take your offer on the spot, then it's you need to go look out for number one as well and make sure you're taking care of yourself at the same time.
Right. I think every college has their own process. I think every school is pretty cautious in state. You got to be careful on, making sure you evaluate the right way in state, making sure that, you don't throw offers out there and guys are trying to commit right next to you and then you burn those bridges by telling them they can't commit. I would say the big misconception about everything is, an offer, just because your offer, doesn't always mean it's committable, like you said, across the country.
Yeah.
I think it's more of a starting point, of the recruiting process more so than whenever me and you worked together at Georgia. I think you see offers, thrown out way more than we did back in 2015 when we worked at Georgia.
It's kind of, you tell me if I'm wrong here, but it's almost in today's time, a lot of these programs throw them out to kind of CYA, cover your ass a little bit, like from a standpoint, especially an out-of-state kid. You go ahead.
Absolutely, yeah. And the big thing now is trying to get guys to come to camp. There's a misconception about coming to camp it's got this notion that it's a bad thing. It's not really a bad thing, but the upperclassmen, have been kind of told across the country that it's not a great thing to go to camps, that they don't really want you. That's not necessarily the case. They just want to be able to work these guys out and fill each other out, because you're going to be getting coached by your potential position coach at that college, so it's good to go out and work out. But the earlier you get an offer out, the more likely guys are going to come to camp. And, you'll see a lot more guys coming into camp as 9th and 10th graders than you will at 11th and 12th grade. So it's crucial to get these guys on campus. And if you're recruiting a kid that has all these SEC offers and he's in California and you want him to come to campus, it's harder to get these kids on campus because they got all these other offers. And why would they come to your school if you don't have an offer? That's what their thought process is. So it's a sophisticated process. Every situation's different. Every offer is different. It's so many different situations. But it's you have to grind through it.
Again, you've been at the high level. Again, we mentioned it. We mentioned Mississippi State, Florida, A&M, LSU, Georgia. In your perfect world, you've seen all different ways to handle a recruiting department. At that level in the SEC, with adding now 16 teams, adding Texas and Oklahoma, how would you set up that support staff, specifically talking about the recruiting department?
Right. I think, it's changing by the day, as you see. But right now, as of this day and age, as of 2024, right now, in the personnel side, I would have a director of offense and a director on defense. And I would have 2 to 3 personnel assistants under them. And all 4 to 5 of those guys will have coaches that they're responsible for in the identification evaluation process, streamlining everything for 25s, 26, 27s, the high school guys. Everybody will have a position. They'll also be responsible for those positions on the advanced scouting and the transfer portal. So if you worked with receivers, you're going to work with receivers in high school, advanced scouting, and the transfer portal. Then you move over, and I would have 1 to 2 communication guys, high school relations. I think that's important this day and age to have 1 or 2 of those guys that, really streamline the communication process, points of contact when kids get on campus. I think that's a pretty valuable piece right now in the landscape in college football. And then I'll have 2 on-campus recruiters that kind of do the logistics and plan everything out and make sure everything on visits goes smoothly. And, they'll work with the communication people hand in hand. So there'd be a whole army of on-campus people as well with the personnel side. So everybody can help everybody. Because, at this day and age in college football, everybody has to do a little bit of everything, but everybody will have a specific, duties.
And communication's key. Like you were talking about the two communicators communicating with the on-campus staff. That's key. Not people just going around and kind of doing their own crap at times, which I think we've all experienced before. It's kind of being on that same page. Starts at the top, as we talked about off air before. Coaches setting that tone from that standpoint. But Bo, again, you brought up as an army of a staff, and I think at the SEC level you need that because, like you mentioned, you're recruiting probably about 3 classes in advance in total, some portal kids. And with that being said, how do you handle the recruitment? And again, every recruitment's different. We're dealing with different human beings. We're all different. How are you dealing with the recruitment from the relationship standpoint of the high school kid to the portal kid to kind of like how are those OVs kind of set up? Like, is the high school kid obviously the long-term relationship? The portal kid's a little bit more business-oriented. Walk us through that.
Right. I think you hit it on the head right there with the relationship part. The high school kids, you're developing these relationships for 1 to 3 years, sometimes more. These college transfers, you basically have a week or less with these guys that you got to watch the film, evaluate them, find a way to get them on campus, set these OVs up. The difference with the OVs are, high school guys, or a lot of these OVs are trending towards June. Knocking these OVs out earlier, and they're more drawn out. They go the whole period. The transfer portal is more NFL business like you said. A lot of these OVs will last maybe 24 hours. They're in, they see what they need to see, hear what they need to hear, meet with who they need to meet with, and they're out. They're going to another school the very next day from your school. So they hit 3 to 4 schools back to back to back. They get home, they're sitting down, they make a decision, and they get back to you. And then, less than 2 weeks later, they're on campus. So yeah. It's a way faster process than the high school. So you have to be really efficient, really on top of your stuff with everything when it comes to the college transfer portal.
Decisions are happening quicker. You got to have your ducks in a row. Bo, a couple more questions. Again, David Bowen joining us here with us. Phenomenal conversation. Again, has been around the SEC a ton. Bo, tell us a little bit about if you could change one rule in college football right now from a recruiting standpoint, what would it be?
Oh, that's an easy one. I've heard a lot of personnel guys say this, but putting personnel guys on the road, I think would be a great rule. That'd be the first one I would do if I had to change a rule, because for example, especially in the fall, let's go to fall. You got a game on Saturday. The coaches are geared up. They're game planning. They're getting ready for the game. Personnel guys, we're done with what we need to be done with, most of the time by Friday. Yeah. So Friday night, the coaches are going to the hotel. A lot of head coaches across the country, they don't even let most of their staff out. So why not send your personnel staff to go gather information from high schools, go watch these games, get body types on players, see how he is in the game, see if you can gather more information to bring back to the staff that's preparing for the game. I think that would be a big, big step forward for the personnel world.
Yeah, I agree. Because at the end of the day, coaches don't like hearing this, but we as personnel guys in those back rooms in college, we watch more high school tape than them. It is what it is. I think it's a fact. We just watch more high school film and probably even more portal film than they do overall. It's just like they spend more time figuring out how to attack the cover 3 beaters and stuff like that. That's just what the personnel role does. I'm with you. I think at some point that has to change. And Bo, before we get you out of here, again, David Bowen joining us, former SEC staffer, currently at Texas A&M. Bo, you were on that 2019 staff at LSU, that historic undefeated season, one of the best teams ever, if not the best team ever, with the Joe Burrow-led team. Joe Brady is the OC. Tell us, you got there in August, that you're kind of – is there a moment or is something happened where you were just kind of like – maybe it wasn't until later in the year. Maybe it was the Texas game that y'all – big win y'all had back in the second half. Y'all came back and kind of got it together. Was there a moment that you're like, yeah, this team could be special?
Right. I'll bring you back to fall camp. You know, everything was – I get there and I see the team. We look pretty good. You know, I'm talking to people on the, you know, new staff members I'm meeting with, and they're like, man, I think we should be favored in every game except maybe Alabama and Tuscaloosa. You know, we go through the season, early in the season, we play Texas, you know, have a feeling, you know, we're pretty good right there. Big game against Florida at home, beat them, still know we're pretty good, but everything at LSU in 2019 builds up to the Alabama game.
Yeah.
Really nothing else matters if you don't beat Alabama. So I would say at halftime at Alabama, we're up 33-13, and you walk into the locker room and you're like, wow, we have something special here. Now we come out the second half and it gets real tight towards the end. Ended up pulling it off. But after that moment, when the clock hit 0 in Tuscaloosa, I think that everybody, nobody ever said it, but in the back of everybody's mind, everybody's thinking nobody's going to beat us. You know, that's kind of the mentality that we had. Then we knew it was special. You know, you get back to Baton Rouge at the airport and you see all these white lights going across the airport where you get off the plane, and there's thousands of fans out there screaming and hollering. I think at that moment, I think it hit everybody that, man, this is a special year, and goes on. I think it's the best team in college football history.
No, I agree with you. I think it is. I think Joe Burrow gives them that advantage. But no, that was special. Got a national championship ring. That's awesome, brother. But, Bo, I appreciate you joining us again. SEC personnel staffer, been around the block. You name the school, damn, half the league, I think. Like we said, yeah. Mississippi State, Florida, LSU, Georgia, Texas A&M. Give him the follow at David Bowen. Wait, TAMU? Am I correct?
TAMU, yeah, correct.
David Bowen, TAMU. Give him the follow. Does a phenomenal job on the personnel world. One of my best friends. Glad he could come on, talk a little recruiting, especially with signing day being yesterday. Bo, enjoy your evening, brother.
Thanks for having me on, man. You do a great job over here.
Appreciate it, Bo. Have a good night, bub.
You too.
Later. David Bowen joining us here, guys. Does a phenomenal job in the industry. Just wanted to get him on, talk a little background. And again, he's been at 5-6 different SEC schools. He knows what it's supposed to look like at that level. Been around a lot of great coaches. Has a national championship ring himself in 2019. So great guest there. Hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. But let's get right to it. Biggest trap game of the year for every SEC team. This doesn't necessarily mean a loss. I'm obviously looking at personnel here and what teams have coming back and what they lose heading into 2024. We got coaching changes. So we got to add that in a little bit, time of adjustment. Early in the year, it may be better to get Alabama because they're getting adjusted than late in the year. So it'll be interesting how that is. And then where the game is on the schedule. That all factors in. For example, some trap games from 2023. Arkansas at Alabama, just where it fit. Alabama was getting ready for their big matchup against Tennessee. Arkansas had been playing everybody close, came down to Alabama, had to get a stop at the end. Arkansas at Ole Miss. Arkansas had the lead with the ball with 7 minutes left. Ole Miss was kind of sleepwalking through that one. They were better than Arkansas. I don't need to tell you about New Mexico State at Auburn the week before the Iron Bowl. New Mexico State got the win. And then another one a little bit. Tennessee at Kentucky the week after Tennessee had a meltdown in the second half, lost to Alabama. They came back. They won. But Kentucky hung around, could have won the game. But let's get to it. Alabama, I think October 26th at home against Missouri. Obviously, Alabama staff changes and personnel changes. But Missouri has some core players back. I mean, Brady Cook, Mookie Cooper, Luther Burden, Theo Weiss, guys like that back for 2024. Eighth game of the year for Alabama with a bye week looming the very next week before that trip to Tuscaloosa. On November 9th. This game kind of seems trap game to me. And again, everybody's schedule is set up different. So it's going to look different, and you're going to be like, how did he come up with that? I'm going to have some non-conference games in here as well. But I think Alabama, that October 26th game against Missouri at home, kind of snuck in there. I think that's kind of a trap game for Bama this year. Arkansas, I think it's the September 14th matchup against, I said some non-conference games, UAB. Stuck in between Oklahoma State, which that non-conference game week 2 is a must win. They have to win that game, Sam Pittman, for his own sake. And then the next week, you go your first SEC game at Auburn. Not saying Arkansas is going to lose, but it's the definition of ugly trap game between where it's sandwiched between your big non-con and your first SEC game. Too early to completely tell how the Blazers will be in their second year under Trent Dilfer, but they'll probably be dangerous. We see it every year. New Mexico State, Auburn, South Alabama, Oklahoma State. This past year, South Alabama went and took it to Oklahoma State in Stillwater. App State at A&M 2 years ago. There's always a group of 5, power, I guess 4 now, upset. This could be it. Auburn, October 26th at Kentucky. Back-to-back road SEC games are traditionally tough. Only 2019 LSU, 2021 Georgia, and 2023 Alabama this past year have won back-to-back true road games since 2019. What do they all have in common? Either a national title or an SEC championship under their belt. With that being said, Auburn travels to Missouri the week before this game, coming off a bye. And I think this game late in October will be tougher than the preseason media pundits will admit. Can Kentucky get the quarterback position right? If not, that even enhances my confidence in this being a big trap game for Auburn. And then honestly, what is the upside for Auburn? I think they're going to be better, and they should. But again, like I've stated on our show a million times, they completely underachieved, I think, this past year. They should have won 7-8 games. The schedule managed. If they're rolling with Peyton Thorne, what's really Auburn's ceiling? 8-9 wins? Very manageable schedule for Auburn, but after looking at the schedule, this game at Kentucky is the trap game. And if Hugh Freeze wants to win the SEC or even compete for it, he knows he has to have it. Can't stumble against teams like Kentucky. No disrespect to Mark Stoops and his program. They've done a phenomenal job. But I feel like this fits the trap game category. Next, Florida, October 5th at home against UCF. UCF should be solid to good. They brought in KJ Jefferson, the Arkansas transfer, coming in to be Gus Malzahn's quarterback. Feel like he fits what Gus wants to do from an improvisation standpoint really well. Florida coming off a bye week with Tennessee looming the next week in Knoxville. A lot of this is what is Florida's record coming to this matchup. Before this game, they got 4 games. Miami, Samford, Texas A&M, and at Mississippi State. What's their record after that? If they're 2-3, I don't know. UCF won this last matchup. I was actually on the sideline my last year working at UCF in the 2021 Gasparilla Bowl in Tampa. UCF is naturally going to be more fired up about this game. They have Prime and the boys, Colorado, coming to town the week before. UCF's going to be fired up about this one. This is one of the more confident trap games I am heading into 2024 as of February 8th. But if I'm Florida, I'm a little nervous about it. They play all 3 of their big in-state, I wouldn't say rivals, but just because I don't think Florida really considers UCF their rival. But they play Miami, UCF, and obviously Florida State. But that October 5th UCF game, Florida fans, be on the lookout. Speaking of October 5th, talking about Georgia's trap game. I didn't want to use this one, but let's be honest. A trap game for Georgia is tough to find. I saw some potential spots like this one between the Alabama and Texas matchups for Georgia. Throw in Mississippi State sandwich in there along the way as well. But again, not saying Auburn's going to win this game, but if Auburn is an improved team like they should be, we talked about it a little bit earlier with Auburn's trap game, this could not come at a better time if you're Hugh Freeze in Auburn. You're getting Georgia the week after they go play an emotional game in Tuscaloosa. They really want to go get that Alabama monkey off their back this year in Tuscaloosa. Saban's not there anymore. Kalen DeBoer's first year. Georgia should probably win that game this year, but they're going to be really invested. I don't think a kid on Georgia's roster has ever lost to Auburn. And Kirby's only lost to him once in 2017, that time at Auburn with Gus Malzahn. But I could see this. Georgia won't lose this game. I could see this being one of those sleepy ones. An example for Georgia fans would be like how they play Kentucky ugly at times. But they win. It's never really in doubt, but it's ugly. I kind of sense this is that game for them next year. Kentucky, the September 21st matchup. Hear me out. You're going to see some MAC teams on here. Ohio, the Bobcats went 10-2 last season. Now, too early to tell again how this group of 5 team will look once August rolls around because we got a spring portal window. But this won't be a roll the ball out and let's get the game over with from Mark Stoops and his guys. Add in, you're coming off 2 big SEC matchups against South Carolina and Georgia with a trip to Oxford next week or the next week. you could be looking ahead. If Ohio was a terrible MAC team, I may lean maybe the Vanderbilt game coming off their bye week, and they're looking ahead to Florida, Kentucky maybe. But I think this is it. Ohio's good enough to beat Kentucky. Kentucky's shown they've struggled with MAC teams before. They hadn't lost, but kind of just got through the game. So I kind of feel like, call me crazy. I looking at the schedule, though, I thought it was this or the Vanderbilt game, but Ohio's probably better than Vanderbilt. So give me the Bobcats as the Kentucky trap game on September 21st. LSU, the October 19th matchup at Arkansas. Most LSU fans are aware of this, and if you followed the SEC for a while, you're probably aware of this. It's not normally a pretty game when the Tigers head to Fayetteville. Again, back-to-back road games for teams have traditionally been tough. Teams, it's tough to go 2-0 in back-to-back true road games, not a bye week built in. This is the first game of back-to-back road games. LSU will go to College Station to play Texas A&M the next week after this. Oh, and the Ole Miss revenge game in Tiger Stadium in Baton Rouge is the week before this matchup. This game used to always be after the Alabama game. LSU would come in kind of looking hungover, but it is once again right after LSU's probably most circled game on the calendar outside of probably Alabama. But they're going to try to get revenge against Lane Kiffin. They've seen all the Twitter war and stuff like that. They're going to have it circled after the loss in Oxford next year. Again, I didn't see a lot of trap games on the schedule, but this one stood out. I thought maybe UCLA. Remember, LSU opens against USC in Vegas. Then UCLA comes, 3 weeks later, I think. Thought maybe that, but I think this one, just because I think it's right after the biggest game, probably their regular season as we stand right now, and it's the first game of back-to-back road games, and only 3 teams have won back-to-back true road games in the SEC since 2019. So I think this one fits the bill, status quo, always ugly in either Little Rock or Fayetteville. LSU fans know this, so this shouldn't be any different next year. Ole Miss, October 5th at South Carolina at Williams-Brice Stadium. Now, Ole Miss is the better team, but it's the first SEC road game the week before one of the biggest games of the year in LSU the next week in Baton Rouge. We were just talking about it from the LSU side. Arkansas was another potential option sandwiched in between Oklahoma and Georgia. You can make a case to me either way on this, either at South Carolina or Arkansas. I went with South Carolina, though. South Carolina coming off a bye week where Shane Beamer is 2-1 in his tenure at South Carolina, coming off byes. Really means nothing in the grand scheme of things, but I thought I'd throw that one in there. But something tells me Ole Miss is going to face some adversity at some point in those first 6 weeks, and this one looks like the most likely to me. They should be 6-0 for the head to Baton Rouge, but something tells me they're going to handle some kind of adversity. I don't know. Maybe I'm not wishing this. I'm just bringing. Maybe Jackson Dart gets hurt. And a guy like Walker Howard has to go win one on the road to get him the next week. Like maybe Dart's not out for the year or for an extended period of time, but maybe Walker Howard has to get him through a game. Some kind of adversity like that at South Carolina, depending when that game time is, could be difficult. This fits the bill of a trap game for Ole Miss on October 5th. Mississippi State. I said you'd be hearing for some MAC schools. The September 14th matchup at home against the Toledo Rockets. Another MAC team making the list. Welcome to the club, Toledo in Ohio. Again, not calling for a Toledo Rocket win here, but I'm also not sure you could call this a gimme win for Jeff Lebby in his first year at Mississippi State. Toledo won 11 games last year, played for the MAC title in December last year in Detroit. Jason Candle, one of the hotter names of a group of 5 coaches, and I bet he has his team ready to roll into Starkville. Also, how will Mississippi State be overall? Again, a lot of learning adjustments early in the season here. Remember, I said, where do these games come on the schedule? New system, new head coach, first-time head coach. Then here's another part. Add in it's sandwiched between a must-have non-conference game and Arizona State. Jeff Lebby has to have that one. Just like I said, Sam Pittman has to have the Oklahoma State game. And you know what? That Arizona State game's in Tempe the next week. That's a long flight home. Oh, and after Toledo, the very next week, the first SEC game against Florida. Screams trap game against a solid MAC team with a solid head coach in Jason Candle. It probably won't be at Toledo. It won't be the head Rocket much longer. This is it. This is a big trap game again to me, very similar to the LSU-Arkansas game. But the travel here from Tempe back to Starkville, and you're probably looking ahead to your first SEC game at home, all your parents, girlfriends coming in, Florida's coming in. No, you better be looking ahead to the Toledo Rockets. That's what I'm telling you. I'm just telling you. This one I'm a little passionate about. Then Missouri, November 23rd at Mississippi State. Missouri is one of the 3 teams that I do not see many trap games on the schedule because of 2 things. Either it was a toss-up game or Missouri wouldn't be favored in some. Very favorable schedule for Missouri. add in Mississippi State should be playing its best ball at that time of the year with it being in late November. The semi-rivalry game in Columbia was something I was looking at, but I promise you, Missouri players, Eli Drinkwitz has made that a big rivalry. I mean, they give a trophy away. What is it? The Mayor's Cup, just because obviously Columbia. But Eli Drinkwitz undefeated against Beamers. They take that game serious. I'm going to say the Mississippi State game, just being a trap game, trip to start Vegas. Missouri hadn't really made that trip at all in the Drinkwitz era. Not saying they're going to win, but again, Mississippi State will be adjusted to the system. That's late in the year. That's late. It's the second to last game of the year. Mississippi State should know their system and how things work. Mississippi State should be an improved team at that point. That's why I'm saying this is a trap game for Missouri. Moving to Oklahoma, the September 14th matchup against Tulane. Tulane somewhat scared Oklahoma the last time they came to Norman in 2021. But this Green Wave team led by first-year head coach John Summerall has a legitimate chance to be a group of 5 rep in the 2024 playoff next year. I'm serious. This is the week before the historic SEC game against Tennessee in Norman, where the hometown kid Josh Heupel comes back. There's no love lost there. That'll be an emotional game. Tulane's the week before. Another out-of-conference matchup that a couple of SEC teams need to be very wary of. I like the Sooner defense. I think they're going to be much improved in year 3 for Venables. I like linebacker Danny Stutzman, safety Billy Bowman, corner Gentry Williams, the other corner Woody Washington, and the defensive end Ethan Downs. All good players. I like them. But they need to be careful here. They need to be careful here because Tulane with John Summerall in their first year is definitely good enough to go compete. Also throw in what's that next week with Tennessee coming to town. First SEC game. Moving to South Carolina, the November 9th matchup at Vanderbilt. Some South Carolina fans may be like, what? But South Carolina didn't have any glaring trap games, in my opinion. There are a lot of games that South Carolina could be looking past. Or so there aren't a lot of games they could be looking past, really. Just kind of think South Carolina's going to be really favored in a lot. It's not really how Shane Beamer operates. And that's not saying I don't think South Carolina could win 7-8 games, but they'll be underdogs in a lot of their games. Vandy late in the year in probably a lazy Nashville setting could potentially spell trouble. How's Lenore Sellers doing breaking in their redshirt freshman quarterback? What's South Carolina doing as a whole? I think that'll be key. This one I was kind of like, I didn't feel great about. I'll be honest with you. And I know we have some South Carolina listeners. Vanderbilt, I was kind of like, I got to put that just because I don't know where they'll be at this point. How many games will they be winning? And they'll be an underdog in a lot of games, like I mentioned. So this is the only game I would feel like specifically fit the criteria of a true trap game. A couple more teams in the league. Tennessee, October 5th you've heard their name a lot here, at Arkansas. Arkansas is going to be playing the bear trap all year, I think. Pretty manageable schedule for Josh Heupel and the Vols in 2024. The only games they will most likely not be favored in, and it's still TBD, is probably at Oklahoma, Alabama, and at Georgia. Too early to tell. But Tennessee coming off a bye week. Arkansas is playing its last game of 6 straight. Similar to South Carolina, it's a schedule where I don't know if I really see a ton of trap games. Tennessee road schedule pretty easy this year. At Oklahoma, at Arkansas, at Georgia, at Vandy. This was kind of the one. I mean, at Vandy's not one. Heupel struggled some on the road during his tenure at Tennessee, so I went with the road game. Most losable home game that they could potentially be looking past at Arkansas. That's why I went with the October 5th matchup there. And then Texas, November 23rd, call me crazy, Kentucky. The Big Blue Nation there's going to be a ton of them in Austin. They travel well. Kentucky should at least be very solid again. Where this game is located on the schedule raises concern for me. It's the week before the Texas A&M game in College Station. Kentucky's dangerous enough to keep you on the edge of your seat. You can't overlook them. Now, will Kentucky straight up win in Austin at Darrell K. Royal? Probably not. Most likely not. But find me a more trap-type game. It's not Oklahoma before Georgia because Texas is going to get up for that in the Cotton Bowl. This is the only one that fit the bill. Going through these schedules, there was few and far that really fit in. But Texas could legitimately lose to Oklahoma. So that's why I didn't put that one in. I think this Kentucky matchup before we're renewing this Texas A&M rivalry for the first time in, 12, 13 years. And hear me out. We're going to go to the next team. And you're going to be, hey, I just heard that date. Texas A&M, their biggest trap game, November 23rd, same week as Texas, Kentucky, at Auburn. I'm already calling this a loss. First, Jordan-Hare Stadium, one of the tougher places to play. Last place I want to be playing is Jordan-Hare the week before all my fans, all my players are going to be looking ahead, trying to get tickets to the biggest game hosted in Kyle Field in the last 12 years, which is when Texas comes to town that next week on November 30th. Like I said, you noticed I put the 2 games of 4 They play each other, Texas and Texas A&M on November 23rd. Texas hosts Kentucky. Texas A&M, unfortunately, goes at Auburn. Massive trap games for both teams there. And then finally, the Vanderbilt Commodores, October 19th. Another MAC team, guys. Ball State, the Cardinals finished 4-8 last year, but with how Vandy has been operating, that doesn't matter. Almost at Georgia State, but Georgia State, the Panthers are probably better than Vanderbilt, so I can't throw that one in there. Throw in this game is in the middle of a 6-straight game murderer's row before the Doors' second bye week. And recently, it's been hard to find a trap game for Vanderbilt because they've been an underdog in so many games under Clark Lee. It's not really Clark Lee's issue, but that's a conversation for another day. But again, just wanted to roll through all 16 teams' potential trap games. Not saying they're going to lose, but again, the more you study it, the more you're like, there's only probably 2 on some team's schedule. And for teams like Tennessee, Missouri, they were tough to find. But again, we still have 6 months to figure all this stuff out. And with the spring portal window, things can obviously change. But as we stand heading into spring ball, these are the potential bear traps for all 16 teams heading in to the 2024 football season. Heading to the hardwood, the SEC basketball midweek review. We got a couple more minutes. We're going to keep this one under an hour. So I'm going to probably go a little faster on this one than I normally do. So let's get to Thursday night's action. Or starting with Tuesday night's action. All right, so we got Ole Miss, South Carolina getting the 68-65 win. The Big Four for South Carolina does it again. It's tough. South Carolina, they're a solid team, dude. They're a legit second weekend team. I mean, Murray Bowles, Talon Cooper, Studi's back from injury, Michi Johnson, guys like that, BJ Mack when he can get going. Josh Gray's a legit bench guy for him. So Ole Miss fought back at the end, but this was not real shocking. I went back. I mean, I picked Ole Miss in this game going into the week, just a feel. We usually don't pick off feel, but still, South Carolina just tough to beat at home, man. And Ole Miss hitting very deep. South Carolina is the opposite of Georgia. They figure out ways to win close games. They let Ole Miss come back late, but South Carolina stuck it out. Again, they host Vanderbilt at home this week. They should get that one. And speaking of Vanderbilt, Kentucky with the 109-77 win. Not a lot to say here. Really not a lot to say here in this one. I mean, you have Antonio Reeves go for 24, Dillingham go for 20. I mean, you had 5 different guys or 6 different guys in double digits here. I mean, Vanderbilt just not a good ball club, man. Just not a good ball club right now. I mean, overall, they got out-rebounded 50-28. I mean, Stack and the boys just are not getting it done this year. Some of it's not his fault. Tougher job than it used to be with Kevin Stallings. But Vanderbilt, I don't have much to say on this one. Kentucky's just a better team. We all kind of figured that. But that was Tuesday's action. Going to Wednesday's action. We got Tennessee getting the 88-68 win over LSU in Thompson-Boling Arena, or Food Center now. It's always Thompson-Boling Arena, just like it's always Bud Walton Arena. I would say Jalen Cook didn't play for LSU, so Trey Hannibal got the start. I think that's an interesting dynamic there. LSU's not a great road team. They're really not. They had a big push to cut it to, I think, 8 with about 4 minutes left. But Tennessee was in control here. Dalton connects. Zakai Ziegler with a big night. Tennessee rolls at home, to be expected. Auburn getting the revenge game, 99-81. I think a lot of people who follow kind of expected this. Alabama has, 9 new dudes, 3 new assistants under Nate Oates that hadn't experienced that Auburn arena. The revenge factor. Auburn had to have it. Bruce Pearl mentioned it. Auburn just completely dominated Alabama on the boards and the blue-collar points. Alabama keeps up with blue-collar points. And Nate Oates said in his postgame they were outscored 25 points in how they grade those. That's Alabama's rebounds, hustle plays, stuff like that they pride themselves on in a program, and Auburn out-hustled them. Wanted it more, really. Auburn acted like they were playing for first place, like Nate Oates said, and Alabama didn't. A little too much for that Alabama team, I think, yesterday. Auburn was a physical team. Janai Broome just dominated, just complete beast yesterday. Jalen Williams as well. Alabama should have went and doubled them down in the low post more and let them shoot. If they beat you with making threes, then so be it. But Alabama went with the opposite approach. If they play in the SEC tournament, I figure both teams probably – Bruce Pearl wishes he would have went to Janai Broome more in the first game in Tuscaloosa, and I think Nate Oates would change his defensive scheme completely. He'd have to. So that would be an interesting rubber matchup in Nashville. But Auburn, we got 4-way tie for first place in the SEC now. Auburn getting a big game they had to have against Alabama, 99-81. Texas A&M getting a 79-60 win over Missouri. Texas A&M just dominating the boards of Missouri. Missouri we're looking at the box score. Will they win a conference game? That's really what we're talking about here. I mean, they got out-rebounded 40-22. It's kind of almost the discrepancy of the Kentucky-Vanderbilt one. But just not a lot of scores really outside of Tamar Bates here. Really, not a lot of scores here outside Tamar Bates for Missouri. Again, Texas A&M kind of is what they are. I mean, they shot better free throw percentage than they normally are, but they're going to miss a lot of shots, 47% from the field, shot 23% from three-point line. They're going to out-rebound you, get you some second-chance points with Henry Coleman. It's kind of the way they operate. They can't be losing. A&M, I think, is going to make the tournament, but they can't be losing games like this, and they did. So, big win. It's always a big win this late in the year, so don't get me wrong there. Then Mississippi State in the Battle of the Bulldogs getting the 75-62 win at Humphrey Coliseum. I mean, Georgia this was a slugfest, real rock fight, low-scoring game. Georgia only scored 62 points. Not a great shooting night. 35% from field for Georgia, 36% from beyond the arc. Mississippi State kind of figured it out. Cam Matthews came up big, 9 points. Really liked what he did, 11 boards. Tolu Smith, 12 boards. Just whipped them on the boards, 43-33. Kind of the story of the midweek. If you won the rebounding margin like you do with a lot of basketball games, you usually win the basketball game. But it was kind of a lackluster – little bit of a lackluster week on the hardwood. Pretty chalk across the board. I mean, like I said, if you went back and looked at my predictions, I picked Ole Miss to beat South Carolina. Didn't feel good about it. But kind of had a feel. And again, I was disappointed in myself. I usually don't go off feel. We usually have reasons. But should have went 6-0 this week. But we didn't. But I think a lot of that stuff kind of went status quo. A pretty uneventful midweek. There. Moving on. Just want to talk a little bit about the 9 teams in the SEC that I think are really fighting for NCAA tournament bids and where they stand from a ceiling standpoint. I would say Auburn and Tennessee are the 2 teams I see as potential Final Four teams. I can't say right now I feel that way about anybody else, but I think with Auburn's depth, them rolling a bunch of bodies out at people, it wears them out. And then Tennessee as well. They got good depth. They actually have an offensive scorer now, and Dalton Connecticut can go get them a bucket whenever they get true bucket getter. Now Zakai Ziegler's coming in his own. Those are the 2 Final Four teams. Second weekend teams, I already mentioned Auburn, Tennessee, but I think you add in at this point Alabama, Kentucky, South Carolina, and Florida. I think those are all second weekend teams. So that's 6 second weekend teams for the SEC. That'd be unbelievable. 6 out of the 16 teams at that point. And then first weekend teams that could potentially make the tournament. I'm still going with 8. I'm mentioning 9. I'm not talking about Georgia or LSU. Obviously, I'm not talking about Missouri, Arkansas, or Vanderbilt, but first weekend teams, A&M, Texas A&M, Mississippi State, and Ole Miss. I don't really see any of those teams getting out of the first week. I think A&M, Mississippi State play too big of a rock fight kind of game. If anybody I kind of like, it maybe be Ole Miss. Chris Beard, a good tournament coach. They have some scores. They'll take some mid-range jumpers that defenses give up. Matthew Morrell would probably be a little bit more aggressive, but I don't see them winning 2 games. They don't. If I had to pick out of those 3 teams to get to the second weekend, it'd probably be Ole Miss, though, just because their ability to score with Juju Murray, Matthew Morrell, Brakefield, Flanagan, guys like that. There's more offensive power out of those teams. But I just wanted to go talk about that a little bit. The upside I see out of the 9 teams competing. I think Final Four potential for sure. Auburn, Tennessee. Second weekend potential. Auburn, Tennessee, Alabama, Kentucky, South Carolina, Florida. First weekend, A&M, Mississippi State, Ole Miss. I think we get 8. I don't think we get 9. I think someone falters here a little bit. But let's go to the SEC league standings as we sit here heading into the weekend. Like I mentioned, a 4-way tie in first place with Alabama's lost to Auburn yesterday. South Carolina 8-2, Auburn 8-2, Alabama 8-2, Tennessee a half game back because they've already had their bye. They're sitting at 7-2. Kentucky sitting at 6-4, a half game up on Florida, Texas, and Texas A&M at 5-4. Ole Miss 5-5. Ole Miss will be off Saturday. They won't be playing. LSU comes in at 4-5. Mississippi State 4-6. Georgia 4-6. Arkansas, Vandy, and Missouri pretty much booked their 3 spots out of the 4 teams that will be playing on that first day of the SEC tournament in Nashville. We call it around here Sad Wednesday. Sad Wednesday around here. So I think those 3 teams are locked. That's the 14 playing 11, 12 playing 13 seed to go play in that quarterfinal day the next day. It's probably going to be LSU, Georgia, I would probably guess, if I had to pick that 11 spot. That's the standings as we stand right now. Heading into the weekend, let's preview it. Let's get into it. Here we go. Right here, right now. 11 a.m. Central Standard Time Zone. Alabama at LSU on ESPN. Let me pull up our buddy Ken Palm here. Oh, right here. Got it. Here we go. All right. Alabama with a 77% chance to win. LSU's a different team at home, though, at the PMAC. It's early. I don't know why it's early because the Mardi Gras, just trying to get them out of there early in Baton Rouge. But it's early. Will Jalen Cook be playing? He was out at Tennessee with a hamstring injury. They started Trey Hannibal. Jalen Cook's been the straw that stirred that drink. If he's out, that probably the percentage goes up. I think Alabama wins this, but it'll be ugly. This would be a sign of Alabama's maturity. How do they bounce back off a rough loss at Auburn last night? In Nate Oates' tenure, Bama traditionally bounces back, though. They had their ugly loss to Oklahoma last year. They bounced back, beat Vandy by 50. They had the ugly loss to Tennessee a couple weeks ago. Bounce back, beat Auburn the next week. They usually bounce back early game on the road. LSU plays a lot better at home. But will Jalen Cook play? That'll be interesting. Give me Alabama on this one, though. Then at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time tip, Vanderbilt at South Carolina on the SEC Network. Ken Palm saying South Carolina has a 91% chance to win this game. I'd agree. At the Colonial Life Arena, I like South Carolina here in this one. Really not much else to say. Vanderbilt's got their one win against Missouri, but give me the Gamecocks here. And then this is one of the bigger ones of the day. 2:30, Auburn at Florida on the SEC Network. Auburn with a 66% chance to win this one. I'm quoted saying it. If Florida wins this game, they're going to finish in the top 4 of the SEC. They still got to get to play Vanderbilt twice in the back half. I think this is the biggest game of the day in the league. I really do. An interesting matchup, Tennessee at A&M. We'll talk about that one in a minute. But I'm going to go with Auburn, though. I think that second half at Ole Miss may have turned Auburn's season around. They're down 9. Chad Baker-Mazzaro told Bruce and the coaches to get out, let him handle it. They had a come-to-Jesus moment, carried it over in the second half, then beaten Alabama at Neville Arena. They struggled on the road, just like a lot of teams. It'll be interesting here, though. Can Florida stop Janai Broome and Jalen Williams? Give me Auburn here. Then we got an out-of-conference matchup, 3 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone. The Zags, Gonzaga, Mark Few and the boys rolling in to Rupp Arena to play Kentucky on CBS. Kentucky with a 60% chance of winning this game. I think Kentucky's athleticism is going to get to Gonzaga this year. They don't have a real true bucket getter like Drew Timme in the past couple years. So I like Kentucky at home, getting back. I mean, they beat Vanderbilt, but their first big win in a while. It's a tournament team, Gonzaga. Give me Kentucky here at home. 5 p.m. Central Standard Time tip, Georgia at Arkansas on the SEC Network. Georgia needs this one. They keep losing these close games, but Mike White's got to cash in. Arkansas is not good this year, but any win in Bud Walton Arena is always going to be tough. So, someone tells me Arkansas wins this game. Give me Arkansas. They've had a week to kind of gather themselves. They didn't play midweek. Give me Arkansas at home in this one. Ken Palm has this one as Georgia with a 51% chance of winning. So they're kind of leaning me. So give me Arkansas. I'm going to disagree with Ken Palm, but they kind of are on the same like with me. So far, me and Ken Palm have agreed across the board on who's going to win, except Georgia. But they were giving Georgia a 50, or he was giving Georgia a 51% chance. I'm going to take Arkansas at home. And then the other interesting matchup I talked about, the 7 p.m. Central Standard Time tip, Tennessee at Texas A&M on ESPN. Texas A&M plays a lot better at home, too. Get some fouls. Tennessee can struggle at times on the road, be ugly. Ken Palm has this as a 65% chance of a Tennessee win. Give me a Tennessee win. I think Tennessee's about to go roll 4 or 5 in a row off. They got a very manageable schedule coming up with some teams at home. I mean, you can see it here. Tennessee's next couple of games are at A&M, at Arkansas, Vandy, and at Missouri, then A&M at home again. I mean, they should get on a run here. That's why I like Tennessee to probably win the league right now if I was picking somebody. But give me Tennessee in a very close game at home. A&M should be a massive win to really hammer home their tournament chances. I like them to get in the tournament, but this would really be a resume win to get it. And then finally, 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone tip, Mississippi State at Missouri on the SEC Network. Ken Palm giving Mississippi State a 70% chance of winning. I like Mississippi State here. As long as they don't go turn the ball over a lot, shoot bad at the free throw line, which they're capable of doing, they should win this game because Missouri, again, doesn't have any real true scoring threat. Give me Mississippi State at home in this matchup. And that's kind of those are the matchups for this weekend. We're right at an hour, guys. Got you in and out of here. I appreciate you joining us on this episode of Mach 10 Sports here on the SEC Unfiltered channel. We had a great show. We had SEC staffer David Bowen, who's been everywhere around the league, talking about the landscape of recruiting, how college football is, the offer process, comparing a high school kid, how you recruit him to a portal kid. Fantastic stuff. We talked Nick Saban on College Game Day. College Game Day is the best pregame show in college football again now. I thought Fox was taking over for a little bit. So talked about that. Biggest trap game for all 16 teams. I encourage you to go watch that. I did a pre-video of this. It'll be on the cfbpod.com channel here in the next few days. I did an extensive overview of that. So go check that out. I'll post that on my social media page. Then we reviewed the week that was on the hardwood. Pretty scratch across the board, or I should say chalk across the board. Nothing real crazy. Most of the favorites won. And this weekend, we got some real interesting games. We got an out-of-conference game, Gonzaga at Kentucky. The two big ones to watch are Auburn at Florida, and I think Tennessee at A&M. Those are the ones. We got a four-way tie, guys, or three-way tie. Kentucky or Tennessee a half game back because they played less games. But really a four-way tie for first. This is the deepest, most fun SEC I've seen in over a decade. It's been a blast following college basketball this year. But guys, we're through another week, 2 episodes on here. I appreciate you joining us. Go like, subscribe, give me the follow at Mach 10 Sports. Like, subscribe here on the SEC Unfiltered platform as well. I hope you guys have a fantastic week. And again, appreciate you joining us on this episode of Mach 10 Sports. You have a fantastic night.